Okay, advanced class. In our continued focus of Chapter 8, which is political parties, we are going to move on to learn about the two major political parties in greater detail and three components of a political party. This is a two-part video lecture series, so here is part one. You are going to open up this document right here, 8.2 study guide, and you're going to open this guy up. And once you do, you're going to see our outline, okay? We've got quite a bit of information here to cover, but we'll do it in two parts to break it up into manageable chunks, and so I don't go over my time limit for my recordings. Okay, so you've got this up. Please fill in any of these blanks, okay, with added detail to help you understand the two major parties today and who supports them and the three components of any political party. All right, getting started. Jump over here. Here's your first groups of fill-ins. We know that the two major political parties today are the Republicans and Democrats, and each party has core constituents. Constituents is a word that means people. People, regular people, okay? Me, teachers, your parents and guardians, etc., the regular citizens. You have now completed a chart which categorized certain traits and people into different political groups, the Republicans or Democrats. And just to review a few of those right now. We can take different regions of the United States and categorize them and decide who generally supports the Republicans. So the R's right here are the Repubs. Republicans generally get support from the Rocky Mountains, the Great Plains, and the South, whereas the Democrats, the Dems, they typically get the West Coast, the Northeast, and large cities. As far as economic beliefs go, the Repubs typically get those that like the private marketplace, okay, so private ownership of small businesses, whereas the Democrats are more heavily related to the public good, okay? When it comes to cultural social beliefs, we're just going to pick one topic. It's abortion. The Republicans tend to be more pro-life. This means they are against it, whereas the Demos tend to be pro-choice, meaning women should get to choose what they want to do with their bodies. People in general, I want to throw this out with a word of caution. This isn't always the case, but in general, the majority of people would fall this way. Republicans tend to be more men and older population. Should make sense. The Democrats, the Dems, tend to have more women, Latinos, and African Americans in their party support groups. All right? As I mentioned before, these are just generalizations. They're not always true. There's always exceptions. Now, when we talk about a new term, the reverse income effect, we first need to get a little background information. And in the past, we're talking 10 to 50 to 100 years ago, generally the rich and the wealthy traditionally supported Republicans, okay, in their stance, while the poor and the less wealthy tended to support Democrats. A good example of this is in the later 1800s when the Irish were starving in Ireland from the potato famine. The Democrats appealed heavily to the Irish that moved to the city and the state of New York. So the Democrats raised in power because millions of Irish came over to start a new life, and many of those Irish were Democrats. Today, when we talk about the reverse income effect, it is the opposite of this tradition. So what does that mean? Reverse, let's write this in, income effect. It means that there's a tendency today for wealthier states to start to favor Democrats. We're talking about California, New York, and Illinois, and the less wealthier states to favor Republicans. The Dakotas, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, that's what we're talking about. So when we talk about where we can place ideas, traits, and people in groups like the Republicans and the Democrats, we need to be careful because of the reverse income effect, but also be mindful of it. It's helpful to know that stuff when we talk about parties and understand why people fall within Republicans and Democratic groups. We can focus on the election of 2012 to get another idea of how political parties garner or get support. So we obviously had President Obama running for re-election versus Mitt Romney from Utah, I believe. Now, we know that Obama won a second term, and here are the keys to Obama's victory. By studying this, we can get an idea of how Obama won and maybe how Romney and the Republicans lost. The key to victory in 2012 was the Great Recession of 2008 to 2010. And by clicking on this link quick, we're going to get a graph that shows that we had a great spike right here, 2008, in unemployment, people not working. And that lasted until the middle of 2010 into 2011, where we started to see a decline. The Democrats would ride this wave of slight success into winning another term. Back to this. Housing prices crumbled in 2008, and the auto industry crumbled as well. And here's my story. I was teaching my third year in Edgerton, Wisconsin, and this is 5 miles away from the city of Janesville, Wisconsin. They had the largest GM, General Motors, car plant in the U.S. This was a place where people were making between $20 and $30 an hour as uncollege educated individuals. They were high, great paying jobs. But because gas prices were $5 a gallon, nobody was buying SUVs, which happened to be what the Janesville plant made. That being the case, all those people in Janesville lost their job when the plant closed. I had poor students in 8th grade tell me in the middle of the spring of 2008, Mr. Esch, I don't know what to do. My parents both lost their job and we don't know where we're going to go. So it was a really tough time. And the economic recovery was a key issue, but so were social issues like abortion. And Democrats rode the wave of the recovery to win in 2012 and falling unemployment rates. The Democrats, under Obama's first term, provided what was called an auto bailout, where millions of dollars was given to GM and Ford to remain open and to kind of make adjustments to more fuel-efficient cars. We have blue-collar workers were promised a raise in minimum wage. This is good. And Latinos were promised more favorable immigration policies to help them earn citizenship. So all these things kind of helped the Democrats propel themselves into a second term in 2012. This cartoon does a really good job of showing us what the Democrats did. They raised taxes on the Americans, and they injected that money, that extra money, into the automakers' businesses, GM and Ford in Michigan and Wisconsin, places like that, and in the South, to keep us running and to keep the industry, the auto industry, going instead of moving overseas. That was a big deal, and it really garnered or gathered a lot of support for the Democrats and Obama. The Republicans under Mitt Romney chose a different stance, obviously. They chose to support smaller businesses, I shouldn't say lower, smaller businesses with lower tax rates for them and keeping the minimum wage what it was. And their argument was, if we keep the minimum wage at $6, $7 an hour, we're going to be able to keep small businesses open. Okay? The higher the wages, the harder it is for businesses that are small to keep their employees. Here's something that's funny. The mid to older population who graduated college also supported the Republicans at this time because they viewed themselves as hard workers who deserve to keep their hard-earned dollar, hard-earned money, okay? They didn't really want to see their hard-earned college education to go to waste, and all the money that they spent and the income that they earn to pay for those things like the auto industry's survival. They also chose a stance of pro-life. This is old news when it comes to abortion. And here's something that really hurt them. There were a few senators that were Republicans at the time that said that they were against abortion even in rape cases. Now, this was a hard thing to do. It caused many Republicans who were pro-life in regular abortion cases to really move Democratic a little bit because they didn't feel that it was okay to be pro-life in rape situations. They felt the woman still should have the right to choose, but only in that case. All right, that wraps up part 2. You should go on and watch. I'm sorry, that wraps up part 1. You should go back and view part 2 and complete the section on the faces of a political party. Good job.